One of the students in Author Accelerator's book coach certification and training program recently sent me a note about a question that she had about how to reply when someone says that the word book coach is cringy. She said that people in the lit world, I'm reading from her letter now, people in the lit world have cringed and rolled their eyes at the word book coach and told me that I should call myself a fiction editor instead because it sounds more serious and professional and because everyone wants to be a life coach. I don't really know how to respond. So I do know how to respond. I have some thoughts about that and want to share them here with you now. The first thing is to make an assumption because we don't know about what the lit world means. And it's a good question because who are these people who are cringing and rolling their eyes? So, the lit world, I think, is not the world of people teaching literature in schools or universities. Those are English teachers. They are people who are helping us learn how to analyze texts and discern them and understand them. They work with literature, but I don't think they're in the lit world as this person is defining it. I don't think those people care about book coaches or what we do or don't do or fiction editors or any of that. I also think that there's a chance that these people are in traditional publishing, but not traditional publishing, the many professionals who work on books that are not considered literature, millions and millions of books a year. So those would be genre fiction, mainstream fiction, cookbooks, travel books, how-to books, middle grade YA, all of the. There's a tiny fraction of people in the traditional publishing world who are working on what might be considered lit, and if that tiny fraction, some of them are working on what is thought of as the canon of Western literature. That canon in recent years has been proven to be extremely narrow and exclusionary, but there are people that still work on bringing out those books for us to have to study and to learn and to read. But the idea of what that canon is growing and changing a lot. But I would say that the people working in traditional publishing, bringing out those classic literature books would be considered to be in the lit world. In terms of the subset of those people who are focusing on current books that they consider to be literature, that is a very small fraction of people who are usually putting that term on the books themselves, and the writers, agents, editors, publicists who say this is literature as opposed to commercial or mainstream or trade fiction or nonfiction. So the number of people that we're talking about being in the lit world is quite small. And my thought about that is that if those folks are cringing and rolling their eyes at book coaches, that's not a bad thing. I cringe and roll my eyes at things in our industry all the time. It helps to define what you do and define your beliefs and your goals and your values if you find something else cringy and worthy of eye rolling. So, for example, I find it cringy when people promise that they can help writers write a book in 30 days or 90 days. I just don't think it's possible to write a quality book in that period of time. I also cringe and roll my eyes when people promise writers that they will help them get a bestseller, because what they're promising is not what most people would consider to be an actual bestseller. I think it's false advertising. I think it's not fair to prey on those people's beliefs about what a bestseller might be. They're not promising a lot of books sold. They're promising usually that bestseller flag in Amazon, which does not take very many copies to attain. So I cringe and roll my eyes at those things. I cringe and roll my eyes at people in the lit world when they assume that only good literature is made outside of the marketplace. That if you start thinking about the marketplace, that automatically means you're not writing well, or that somehow the quality necessarily has to go down. I think it's cringy to ignore the marketplace. Books are bought and sold. They are products that are made to and had a price put on them and put in the marketplace. And I think writers who want to be in that marketplace, who want to be read, need to consider the needs and demands of that marketplace. I think it's cringy to exclude oneself from that and focus only on writing as if it were in a vacuum. So I do my own fair share of cringing and eye rolling as a way to define what I believe is what I want my company to stand for, what I want to teach, what I think book coaches should be doing. It helps me to point at other people and say, I think that's ridiculous or manipulative. So if people are pointing at me or book coaches and saying, I think that's cringy and eye rolly, that's good. It's helping them define what they think is right or what they value or what they believe. There's room for all of us in this vast world and for all kinds of beliefs and stances. And again, cringy and eye rolling is in the eye of the beholder. And if it helps them to figure something out for their own selves, fine. For the idea about it being more serious and professional to call oneself a fiction editor, I I think that's just ignorance. Fiction editors traditionally at traditional publishing houses were part of the establishment. So, of course, they sound serious and professional. Book coaches are people coming up in a brand new industry that has come up as a result of the changes in publishing. So, fiction editor is a term that comes from the history of book publishing and the way it always was. And fiction editors are amazing. Anybody who's ever been edited for their fiction has loved it, because having somebody, a professional, put their eyes and their perspective and their mind and their heart on your words is an incredible experience for a writer. We all love it. We love our fiction editors. But to imagine that they are more professional and serious because they're on the inside of traditional publishing, as opposed to book coaches who are on the outside of traditional publishing, that is just ignorant. Surely there are book coaches who are not serious and professional, but as a whole, there are people in this brand new industry who are taking it very seriously and trying to set standards of excellence and integrity to help writers and actually give writers the training and support and encouragement that they need to understand the changing marketplace. So that idea that one is more serious than the other because it's more familiar or because it comes from a historical position just doesn't make any sense. The everyone wants to be a life coach comment that book coaching is cringy because it's adjacent to this idea of life coaching by its words or perhaps by its philosophy. I don't quite even know what to do with that comment, but what I would say first of all is a book coach is very different from a life coach, because we are helping people with an actual product. We are helping them make a thing. They are creating a book. They are writing. They are working towards a goal. Maybe that goal is to finish a manuscript. Maybe it's to learn how to write well. Maybe it's to get that book into a position to approach the marketplace. But what we're doing with them is in service of that thing that they're making. We're not talking about writing in a vacuum. Again, I'm using that term. We're not talking about writing for its own sake or writing just because it's fun. We're helping, it can be fun. We're helping the writer to achieve an actual goal with an actual thing that we're making. So it's very different from life coaching. I've never been life coached. I'm not trained as a life coach, so I can't speak to what life coaching is, but I do know that that's a big difference between a book coach and a life coach. It's also a difference between a book coach and a therapist. We are not a therapist. We are working with this object, this thing, this product that the writer is making, and we're working with the writer's doubts and fears and habits in relation to that thing that they're making. So understanding what book coaching actually is makes you see that it's not really adjacent to life coaching at all. And then the idea that if everybody wants to be a life coach, that means you shouldn't want to do that. Like, does that mean it cheapens it that everybody wants to do it, or it somehow makes it a cliche? I don't quite know what that comment is about, but here's what I have to say about that. If everybody wants to be a thing, that probably means there's a market for that thing, and only the people who do that thing well are going to continue to get to do it. So what I always say about becoming a book coach is you want to run a business that is sustainable, and by that I mean you're getting paid well enough to do it and continue to do it. And the only way that's going to happen is if you're actually serving people, serving writers, and helping them and getting the results that you are promising. So eventually a book coach would go out of business if they were not very good. It's a marketplace like anything else. And so this idea that it's saturated, or that life coaching is saturated and book coaching sits next to that somehow, and therefore it's saturated. It just, again, doesn't make any sense. There is room for so many book coaches because so many writers need help. They need help at all different stages of the writing process, in all different genres, for all different reasons and goals and outcomes that they're seeking. The publishing universe and landscape right now is extremely complex and changing and difficult to understand, even though for those of us who are in it. So for writers who are trying to enter it, having a coach to help them navigate and understand and position themselves to enter that marketplace in the best way possible for their project is a very valuable service to offer. So the idea that it's, again, sits close to a life coach, it's, so what? That's what I have to say about that. So I did write a script for this person to give in response to somebody who says what you're doing is cringy. And here are some of what I have said that they might share in that situation. If somebody says, you shouldn't use that term book coach, it's cringy, you should call yourself a fiction editor instead, what I would say is, I actually love the word book coach. It captures how I want to support writers throughout the creative process, not just helping improve the words on the page, but helping them overcome their doubts, understand the marketplace, and keep their writing project on track. So answering the cringy commentary with facts about what a book coach is and what it means to you, I think, is one great way to go. A second great way to go is to address that idea of the publishing landscape and to say, maybe a fiction editor sounds more serious and professional than book coach because it's what we're used to from the way things have always been done. But the business of publishing is changing, and writers are now having to find their own guidance on the path to publishing. I know what I do as a book coach can help, and it's up to me to convey to my clients what the benefits of book coaching is. I plan to do that by X, and X would be fill in the blank for what that coach is doing in particular and specifically to help the pool of writers that they intend to help. So it's counteracting that cringy comment with a context about where book coaching has come from and how it's positioned in the publishing landscape, I think, is another way to go. Certainly what I love is that the person who asked this question is looking for an answer and not accepting the fact that a book coach is a cringy term or a cringy thing to be. That's a ridiculous thing to take on. And we want to counteract that at every turn. Oftentimes when something's new, you have to educate people on what it is. It's a lot of what we talk about at Author Accelerator. We know that all the book coaches that we're training and certifying who are out there doing this work are pioneers. It's the Wild West here in this industry. And what we're trying to do is set the bar for high standards and integrity, and to help our coaches be able to answer these kind of questions until the day will come when book coach is taken just as seriously as fiction editor.